You're listening to the Fan Club podcast, where two polar opposites experience each other's fandoms for the very first time.
Hey guys, and welcome to episode 4.
Yeah.
We are on episode 4. And this episode is going to be on the first Thor movie, directed by Kenneth Branagh, aka Gilderoy Lockhart.
Yeah.
And I just want to preface this episode by saying, I don't know if I have a ton to say. This movie was kind of boring.
Yeah, it's not one of the more action-packed ones. It's more of Thor
I could argue
learning
to say
be
it was
a good person.
I would argue to say it was almost too action-packed.
There wasn't a whole lot of action.
Like, there was a lot of fight scenes that didn't go anywhere.
There was, I think, 4 in total. The Jolton one, the Destroyer.
Either way, I apologize if this is your favorite of the Marvel movies. It was not mine, I can tell you that. Like, there are still things that I liked, still things that I have comments on, but I don't have, like, a ton of comments on each scene or anything like that. So this might be a little bit of a shorter episode, maybe slightly. So this was directed by Kenneth Branagh, like I said. This is the only of the Marvel films to be directed by Kenneth Branagh. And it came out in 2011. Which feels like simultaneously yesterday and also a million years ago. So it's a little weird. So going into this, Thor was the one that I knew the least about. Literally, I said at the end of the last episode that the only thing I knew about Thor is that he was a god from space, and Matthew laughed at me.
Yeah.
Did we even introduce ourselves?
No.
My name is Sarah.
This is Matthew.
The movie opens with him falling from the sky and Natalie Portman finding him. And then it jumps back to Asgard. And then it jumps back to them finding him again. So I just thought that was a little strange.
Yeah.
I get why they did it, but it was like, wait, I thought we already saw this. You have Anthony Hopkins narrating this whole, backstory. And my immediate thought was, are Frost Giants the White Walkers? They look like the White Walkers. Like, the main dude literally looks like the Night King.
Do you know what they're called in the movie? Or what their race is?
I know that the one guy is, was it Laufey?
That's his name. They're Joltons.
Jolton. I knew that.
Jotunheim, the realm of ice.
Matthew laughs at me when I say this, but is Asgard a planet?
No.
It's a realm?
Yeah.
Because the way they describe it sounds like a planet.
It's a realm. Like Jotunheim, Asgard. There's a couple others that I'm just blanking on their name. But they're different realms. Because
Thor has, a whole thing later where he's describing, the different realms. And it's what do they call it? The tree realm?
It's the world tree.
The world tree?
The world tree connects all the realms together.
Because they call it that. We already watched Captain America yesterday. We're kind of filming a couple days after we watched the movie. And so they kind of go into a little bit of the world tree in Captain America as well.
Yeah, the world tree is deep in a lot of different mythologies. And so, the world tree has been talked about in, Egyptian, Mayan, Norse, a lot of religions in the eastern part of the world. The world tree connects everything together. Anywhere from animals to man to trees to insects, it's all connected via the world tree.
I did really there was a line, I don't know if I should talk about it here or later, but there's a line that Thor says, so Natalie Portman's character is a scientist, and they're talking about science being magic, and he's the where I come from, science and magic are one and the same. I really liked that whole conversation. That was, I thought that was really interesting.
That's even, people still say that today. Magic is just science that people just don't understand.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, what's science to one person could be magic to another.
This movie, at least in the beginning, reminded me a lot of Jupiter Ascending.
That is not a good start.
Jupiter Ascending is a terrible movie.
Isn't Natalie Portman in both?
No, Natalie Portman is in the prequel for Star Wars.
Who am I thinking of?
Mila Kunis. Yeah. Also in Black Swan. But, Jupiter Ascending, and if you haven't watched that movie and you need a good, laugh, that movie is so weird and so bad. They spent so much money on a pile of garbage. It's a good time, but it's not a good movie. But, like, just the cinematography in Thor, at least in the beginning, when they're, like, showing Asgard and stuff, reminds me a lot of, like, establishing shots of the Jupiter Ascending world that I cannot think of right now. So there is, like, a little flashback to Thor and Loki as kids, and my thought was, if they're gods and they're immortal, why are they aging?
They're not immortal.
Isn't there, like, a line later where he says that he's immortal?
They can live for millenniums of years. They can live for thousands upon thousands. I mean, Thor in this movie would technically be like 26,000 years old. Odin is in the 100,000s.
Okay, so they just, like, exist on a different plane of, like, aging.
Yeah.
Because I was confused as to why they were children when my interpretation of them was that they were immortal. I just thought they were, like, born adults.
In most mythologies, the gods die and then get reborn, die, reborn, die, reborn. Kind of like in Greek mythology, how Zeus has so many kids that age. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing as that. It's only a more recent thing where gods are immortal. I mean, it's just like everything else. There's a life cycle to everything. So
we meet Odin, who is played by Anthony Hopkins, who I love. Like, one of my favorite movies of all time is Silence of the Lambs. He's incredible. I also love him in Westworld. He's awesome in Westworld.
The one season he plays.
We don't need to talk about the other seasons. As far as I'm concerned, they don't exist.
Season 2's okay. Season 3's when
it's trash fire. I really enjoyed the metal eye patch that they gave Odin. That was a choice.
So, do you want to guess So, Odin lost his eye. In the movie, it's different. He lost it in the war with the Jotuns. But in mythology, he gave up his eye for all knowledge. So he can predict
I'm just saying,
the past,
there could be much
and
more
future.
comfortable materials than metal. Like, Nick Fury has a leather one.
Yeah, but also, I mean, it's Asgardian steel, so it's, like, impenetrable to
I'm more talking
everything.
about the costume than anything.
Yeah.
It cannot be comfortable.
It's probably plastic or rubber.
Okay, one of the biggest takeaways I found from this movie is that Kenneth Branagh loves a Dutch angle.
The entire movie is a Dutch angle.
And if you don't know what a Dutch angle is, I went into it a little bit in our Iron Man 2 episode, which Iron Man 2 is a good example of what to do with a Dutch angle. Thor is a good example of what not to do with a Dutch angle.
Yeah.
Because basically a Dutch angle is a filmmaking technique that is used to convey anxiety and a tense energy, and, like, usually the camera is, like, slightly crooked and it's, like, a really tense scene. The entirety of Thor almost is filmed in a Dutch angle. And it really comes across as them just trying to be really artsy, and it, like, doesn't work most of the time. And it just, like, completely ruins what a Dutch angle is supposed to convey, to where, like, the scenes that are actually tense don't come off that way because it's shot exactly the same way as every other shot. And I know this, like, that's really nitpicky.
Yeah.
But, like, it really bugged me. And I counted at least 6 in the first 15 minutes, which is a lot. There are movies that go, an entire 2.5 hours and only doing 1. So if that tells you anything, look to Iron Man 2 if you're going to stay within the Marvel universe. Look to Iron Man 2, and the hearing scene is a really excellent job of like a proper use of a Dutch angle in a really chaotic scene. Mm-hmm. I thought that it conveyed the anxiety and the tenseness in that scene very, very well. This movie, however, it just completely ruined what a Dutch angle is supposed to be, and it really irked me. Yeah. At some point, it just kind of became comical with, like, we get it, Kenneth. Like, cinematography terms. I do really like the sets of Asgard. I scoured the internet, and I couldn't find whether or not they were practical.
What?
The sets for Asgard. I couldn't figure out if they were actual sets or if they were green screen.
A lot of green screen.
That's what I figured.
The only stuff that wasn't really green screen was, like, the close-up shots on some stuff.
Because, like, there's that one room that has all the circles on the wall. Like, is it the entrance to the bridge?
That's...
Where Idris Elba is.
Yeah, that, I think, was...
It's like the gold circles.
Yeah, it's the Bifrost.
Yeah, that doesn't look real.
I think CGI, but I think the hole that they would come in and out of was real.
I mean, you have to do some things practically in order for the actors to interact with it.
Yeah.
But... Oh, I can talk about this here. So, I didn't write this down, but the friends that he has, I cannot remember any of their names.
The Warriors 3 and Sif. Or Sif.
I kind of thought all of them were terrible.
What do you mean?
I didn't think any one of them was, like, a great actor. I'm really sorry about the hot takes in this episode, because, like, frankly, I didn't really like this movie very much. Again, I'm really sorry if this is your favorite movie. But, like, it was mainly, I think, Josh Dallas who ruined it for me.
He gets replaced by someone much funnier.
I just felt like his, like, lines did not land.
No, so the Warriors 3 were more of a joke in the comics. They were, like, you know, like how there's the professional dancer and then there's the background dancers?
Sure.
They're like the background dancers, where they're not the star of the show at all.
They're like the three girls that stand next to the microphones and sing behind the lead singer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where no one knows their names. Where they're just...
I just don't think they added anything, is my point.
They're literally there just to help Thor. So
yeah,
they take the hits for Thor.
Like I said, I could literally not remember a single one of their names until you just said it. But no, so if you don't know, Josh Dallas is, he plays the prince in Once Upon a Time, which, if any of you know that show, I'd be shocked. Because I feel like no one watched it. I really love the fish out of water, like, storyline that Thor has in this movie, where he's, you know, there's a scene in the diner where he's drinking the coffee and he throws it down, he wants more. Because that's, like, customary where he's from. Mm-hmm. I really love, like, him not understanding last names. Like, he calls, like Coulson, son of Cole. So we then figure out that Loki was originally son of Lothi, who's the Jotun, the Night King. Every time he came on screen, I was like, oh, the Night King's back.
I have some issues with them choosing the Jotuns as the main villain in this movie.
Well, because... I was reading something somewhere, I don't think it was IMDb, but I was reading something somewhere that the Jotuns historically are, like, a pretty peaceful...
Thor, in Norse mythology, Thor murdered them all. Just because he felt like it. One day. Literally murdered all the Frost Giants. Mm-hmm. To prove that he was worthy. So the war was based more on the Vanir and Asur. In the God of War video game.
I wouldn't know how to correct you. I just don't want people to come for us if we're not saying it right.
I'm saying it right because this part, like, the Jotuns, the Aesir, Vanir, Thor, Odin are all in the God of War game on PlayStation. I know I'm pronouncing those correctly because that's how they say it in the game.
Loki and Thor's relationship reminds me of Mufasa and Scar.
Yeah.
Is that off base?
No.
We also get the first look at Hawkeye, so we've officially met all of our Avengers, which, I mean, I guess we haven't met Mark Ruffalo, but, like,
no,
for all
at this
intents
point, we haven't met Captain America yet.
Well, like, I guess we've already watched Captain America, so I guess my brain is already...
Yeah, so at this point, you would not know about Captain America.
But yeah, like, that's my notes on... I have, like... We can go into some fun facts, but I'm afraid this episode's gonna be, like... short.
Tom Hiddleston researched the Marvel Comics Loki to found a multi-dimensional character and based his performances as Loki on 3 different characters: Theodore O'Toole,
enigmatic?
Yeah. Reckless persona, Jack Nicholson, who's edgy and nearly insane persona, and Clint Eastwood persona with simmering anger.
I see all of that, honestly. There's so the town that they're in New Mexico, what is that town even called? It's like, it basically roughly translates to the same thing that Bifrost roughly translates to, which I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the Earth
Antique
Town
Bridge.
The Earth Town where most of the movie set is named
Puente Antiguo,
which means antique bridge, and hinting at the Bifrost using it as a frequent destination point. isn't
I didn't really have any notes on like the Bifrost and because frankly, I'm going in this with like no knowledge of Norse mythology whatsoever.
So, in the comics, the Bifrost isn't so much as a magical portal like it is in the movie. It's more of just a bridge that splits off where you go whatever direction to wherever. So it's not so much a magical portal. It's more of like a walking bridge.
Well, because I remember I read something along the lines of originally they wanted to use the word wormhole, but they didn't think it was appropriate for the
it's not
settings.
Completely wrong. It's not completely wrong. It is technically a wormhole.
So Dr. Selvig, who's played by Stellan Skarsgård, mentions a comrade who got mixed up with S.H.I.E.L.D., whom he described as a pioneer in gamma radiation. This says that he was referencing Bruce Banner.
Yeah, I could see that. I could also see it as
Stearns. Who's Mr. Green, or Mr. Blue, I mean.
Mr. Blue, yeah. I could see that.
And Stellan Skarsgård is one of the potential dads in Mamma Mia. He's the Swedish one. He's I cannot ever remember any of their names.
That's better than what I could have.
But he's the one with the boat. He's also the dad. He's the prince's dad in the live action Cinderella. Also directed by Kenneth Branagh.
So this is the first time we actually see the Infinity Gauntlet. There's a bunch of other weapons in the vault that are actually used in different Thor
and
movies.
I vaguely know what the Infinity Gauntlet is because I worked in what was that, 2018, I worked at a store called Box Lunch.
19.
Or early 19. It was early. Anyway, it was right around the time when Endgame came out, whenever that was. Mm-hmm. I was working at a store called Box Lunch in the mall, which is basically, it's owned by Hot Topic, and it's basically just like a bunch of fandom stuff. And like I said, it was right around the time that Endgame came out, and we had so many Infinity Stone, Infinity Gauntlet merch that I was selling. That, like, that's my only understanding for what any of that means. But, like, that section of the store was so not my wheelhouse. We do have our introduction to, do they ever even refer to it as the Tesseract in this movie? But the glowing blue box.
It's the casket of ancient winters. It freezes people.
Okay, because it looked very similar to the Tesseract in Captain America.
It's not the Tesseract. It's called the casket of ancient winters, an enchanted container filled with the frosty winds.
Okay, so it's different than the Tesseract.
Yes, the Tesseract. So,
the Tesseract is the time zone, or time stone, I mean.
Yes, I'm not going to go into how they were created.
I only know that the Tesseract is a thing because we've already watched Captain America.
Yeah.
Also, they reference the Tesseract or the Infinity Stones and the Infinity Gauntlet in an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
The Infinitude Gauntlet.
I love that episode so much. Like, I will go back and watch the heist episodes, like, compilations on YouTube just to get in a good mood. I love the Bifrost Bridge set. I thought it looked really cool. It also really reminded me of Mario Kart, the Rainbow Bridge. I swear, everything I say, he rolls his eyes at.
But, so, this is an interesting fact. So, Thors Hammer Mjolnir is cast out of Asgard and lands in New Mexico. This was based on the comics Fantastic Four 536, where in the aftermath of an apocalyptic event on Asgard, Mjolnir is cast out to land in Oklahoma, where it's laid until Thor came to reclaim it.
So why did they change it to New Mexico?
Because they did.
Was Oklahoma not interesting enough? No shade to Oklahoma.
A Jotun calls Thor a little princess. In the comics, once Thor's hammer was stolen, he dressed up as a love goddess Freya to retrieve it. So there's certain things in this movie that...
directly reference the comics.
No, like Norse mythology.
Yeah, no, that's what I meant.
Like the actual mythology. The horse that Odin rides on is his personal steed. It's an 8-legged horse called Sleipnir. It's an ancient horse that only Odin has the only one of. In Norse mythology, there's a bunch of other things like the ravens. Thor will send down a milk to Earth to get info on. One means thought, one means memory. And that's how Odin got those when he lost his eye.
Yeah.
To learn about the future.
I really like how Kat Dennings' character refuses to actually call it what it is. She just always refers to it as Mew Mew. Because I can't say the full
Mjolnir. So the reason why was because she was actually having issues. Kat Dennings was having issues saying Mjolnir. And
Mjolnir.
She was having trouble saying it.
I don't think I'm bad at pronouncing things, but for some reason that word does not compute for me.
So she just said Mew Mew.
Mew Mew.
And they just went with it.
Oh, the end credit sequence was the only end credit sequence that didn't directly reference the next movie.
Yeah, it
references the Avengers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know how, I just know it does. The final Marvel Studios movie shot directly on 35mm film. This was shot completely on film.
Mm-hmm. Don't forget, this was 2011.
See, I think it was just an extra step to just be an artsy. Just
yeah.
The 35mm film and just the trillions of Dutch angles. We get it, you're a filmmaker? Yeah, most, unless it's explicitly said, most films these days, and have been for a while, are digital. Film is extremely expensive.
So this is kind of interesting. Agent Coulson asked Thor if he received his training with Special Forces. Technically, it's true, because Hemsworth was trained by a former Navy SEAL for Thor.
Also, that his brother Liam, who is married to Miley Cyrus for a time, was on the short list for Thor. They were competing for the role.
So he was good.
But then Liam did Hunger Games instead.
Liam suggested his brother also try out. But it is actually the first Marvel movie that the Kevin Feige produced going forward.
It was meant to be called a wormhole, but they suggested it was too 90s of a term, given that the Stargate series, which, does anybody remember that show?
Nope.
My family watched that show religiously. I have very few actual memories of that show because I was very young. There were parts of when they would go through the Bifrost, it did remind me a little bit of Stargate. The first introduction. Did we talk about Hawkeye at all?
There's not a lot to talk about.
He's literally in one shot.
Yeah, it was more to introduce him.
Isn't he the only Avenger that doesn't have his own standalone movie? He has this show.
It was rumored that he was going to get his own movie after the Avengers, where it was going to be Black Widow and Hawkeye. It was rumored that they were going... They reference a lot of, their past missions, and so one of the rumors was...
I just find, from an outsider, I find Hawkeye so uninteresting.
He actually has a very interesting story,
Maybe it's Jeremy Renner that puts me off.
No, I mean,
That man is weird.
They did Hawkeye dirty in this movie. They could have done a lot better. They could have had Hawkeye join the fight against the Destroyer in New Mexico.
I, in some ways, kind of get Loki's frustration a little bit. He doesn't even really deserve to be king.
No, Loki does not deserve to be king at all.
No, I'm talking, I don't think that...
Yeah.
I don't think that Thor really... He's too much of a child to make, wise decisions.
But also, Odin's not going to die for a long time. Odin doesn't sleep. That's why it's called the Odin sleep. In the comics, sometimes...
See, I interpret that as, a coma.
No, literally, he doesn't sleep. And so he could be asleep for a year. He could be asleep for 1,000 years. He could be asleep for a week. It's just, he doesn't sleep. He puts off his sleeping because he has to rule all 9 realms. Yeah, so overall, this is by a landslide my least favorite.
If you can't tell, we're 33 minutes into this recording, and I have nothing else to say. I just didn't think that this was a good movie as far as a small piece of the whole, and I also don't think it was a good movie as just a standalone movie. I was just kind of bored. Yeah,
it is the first MCU movie to be released in 3D.
Do you guys remember when every movie was released in 3D?
Mm-hmm.
And how when you would watch a movie in theaters in 3D, and then you would watch the same movie at home, and it was like they would have something jumping out at you on the camera, and how weird it felt. Yeah, there's really not much there's nothing really interesting
Well, Josh Dallas is credited as the wrong name in the credits.
Yeah, he's credited as Joshua.
Yeah. Well, his name's Josh.
Wow. What a fun fact.
The Norwegian village Tonsberg seen in the flashback is the same as the one the Red Skull invades in Captain America. Mm-hmm. It is a very...
Yeah, and next week we will be covering Captain America.
Which
I liked so much more than this movie. Like, leaps and bounds more than this movie. Again, I'm really sorry if you love Thor. Maybe I'll like the other ones in the series.
You'll like Ragnarok.
I love Jeff Goldblum.
I have a feeling Ragnarok will be one of your favorites, and Ant-Man will be one of your favorites.
I'm talking just Thor. I just didn't think that this particular movie was that interesting. But yeah, next week we'll be on Captain America. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm really sorry that we just didn't have a whole lot to say, but I didn't really want to skip it.
Yeah, I mean...
I felt like it was an important thing to cover, to like kind of a stepping stone to get.
Yeah, more than likely Thor the Dark World will also be a shorter one.
You don't think I'll like it that much? Okay, well, we will see you guys next week. Hope you have a good week. Bye!
Bye!
If you would like to send us any feedback or any messages, you can follow us over on Instagram at @thefanclub_podcast or on Twitter at @fanclub_podcast. Or you can discuss each episode with us over on our subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/thefanclubpodcast. And make sure that you tune in every Marvel Monday.